The river roared like a beast unleashed, swallowing cars tearing trees from their roots. In the chaos, Jack Reynolds stood paralyzed for only a heartbeat, his eyes locked on the woman clinging to a half-submerged stop sign. Her knuckles had turned white against the metal pole water rising to her chest. People lined the roadside phones recording what no one dared prevent. Jack's boots were moving before his mind caught up, splashing into the icy flood. Ben's scream cut through the roar of the water. Chadung Lamve! The 9-year-old's face contorted with fear, his small hands gripping the edge of their pickup truck's bed where Jack had ordered him to stay. But Jack couldn't stop, not with a life hanging in the balance. The current hit like a linebacker, nearly sweeping Jack's feet from under him. Each step forward was a battle against nature's raw power. Debris slammed against his shins, branches trashed someone's mailbox. The cold water numbed his legs, but Jack pushed forward, eyes fixed on the woman. Her gaze met his wide with terror and something else. Something that looked strangely like recognition. 20 feet became 15, then 10. Jack's work jeans grew heavy, his boots filled with water. The woman's grip slipped, her body sagging an inch lower. Jack lunged the final distance, his calloused hand closing around her wrist, just as her fingers released the sign. The current immediately tried to claim them both, but Jack's other hand found the metal pole, creating an anchor in the chaos. A fallen oak branch slammed into Jack's back, the impact stealing his breath. Still he held firm, gradually pulling the woman toward him until he could wrap an arm around her waist. Her body trembled violently against his chest, waterlogged clothes cold against his skin. Back on the roadside, the onlookers had transformed from spectators to potential saviors. Two men waded carefully into the shallower edges, forming a human chain toward Jack. Inch by inch, they fought their way back to solid ground. The woman's weight shared between them as the water tried to reclaim its prize. Jack's chest heaved as they finally reached the asphalt, laying the soaked stranger onto the road. She was pale, shivering, clutching her chest as if air refused to stay inside her lungs. Her expensive clothes, what once must have been a tailored blazer and silk blouse, clung to her frame like a second skin. Ben pushed through the gathering crowd, a wool blanket clutched in his small arms. "She's freezing," he said, voice steadier than Jack expected, as he draped the blanket across the woman's shoulders. The boy's eyes held the same quiet determination Jack recognized from the mirror, the Reynolds trait of staying calm in crisis. The woman coughed, hard water streaming from her mouth before she sucked in air, finally steadying. Her green eyes darted to Jack's with disbelief. "You risked your life," she whispered, her voice ragged, refined despite its weakness. Her accent carried the polish of education and money out of place in their blue-collar town of Oak Ridge. Jack shook his head, his voice gruff but warm. "Wouldn't have been able to sleep tonight if I didn't." Water dripped from his short brown hair, carving paths down a face weathered by outdoor work and responsibility. At 39, the creases around his eyes told stories of both laughter and hardship. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The woman's body suddenly tensed under Jack's hand. Her eyes scanned the crowd with unmistakable panic. "Ambulance is coming," Jack reassured her. "You'll be all right." "No hospitals." The words came sharp and desperate as she gripped Jack's sleeve with surprising strength. Her soaked hair clung to her face, dark strands against pale skin. "Please, they'll find me there." Jack frowned, studying her face. Fear radiated from her, not the residual fear of nearly drowning, but something deeper and more immediate. His military instincts, dormant but never forgotten, hummed a warning. This woman wasn't just running from the flood. The ambulance turned the corner, red lights painting the wet asphalt. Jack made a decision that would alter the course of his carefully constructed life. "Can you stand?" His voice lowered, meant that only for her ears. The woman nodded, determination replacing fear. Jack helped her to her feet, steadying her against his side. To onlookers, it appeared he was simply assisting a trauma victim. Only Ben watched with curious eyes, sensing the shift in his father's demeanor. "My truck's just there," Jack murmured. "What's your name?" "Catherine?" She answered, leaning into his support. "Catherine Morgan." The paramedics approached, equipment in hand. Jack intercepted them with practiced ease. "She's all right, just shaken up." "I've got her. My son and I will make sure she's taken care of." His tone carried the natural authority of his military days, leaving little room for argument. One paramedic hesitated. "She should really be checked out, sir. Near-drowning victims can develop complications hours later. Catherine's fingers dug into Jack's arm, her message clear. I was a combat medic, Jack replied, the half-truth flowing easily. I know the signs. I'll bring her in if anything changes. The explanation satisfied them enough to move on to other victims of the flash flood. Jack guided Catherine to his truck, helping her into the passenger seat while Ben climbed into the back. The boy remained silent but watchful, absorbing every detail with the heightened awareness of a child who had grown up faster than he should have. As Jack pulled away from the scene, Catherine's rigid posture gradually softened. Thank you, she whispered, her gaze fixed out the window at the devastation left by the rushing water. You didn't have to do that. Jack's eyes remained on the road, navigating around fallen branches and emergency vehicles. You're afraid of something, or someone. Hospital seemed like the last place you wanted to be. Catherine turned to study his profile. You're very observant, Mr. Reynolds, Jack Reynolds. He took a turn onto a side street less affected by the flooding. And that's my son, Ben. Ben leaned forward from the back seat. Are you running from bad people like in the movies? Catherine's lips curved into a genuine smile despite her situation. Smart boy. Let's just say some people would prefer I disappeared in that flood today. Jack shot her a warning glance, not wanting Ben involved in whatever danger this woman carried with her. The boy had seen enough darkness since losing his mother. Their modest two-story home appeared around the bend, white-clapboard, with blue shutters and a covered porch. Nothing fancy but solid and well-maintained by Jack's own hands. The detached garage behind the house had been converted into a woodworking shop where he created custom furniture when not taking construction jobs. It's not much, Jack said as he parked, but it's joyful. Catherine's eyes scanned the property with an appraising glance. It's perfect, truly. Inside, the home revealed the careful balance of a single father raising a son. Clean but lived in, with schoolwork magneted to the refrigerator and a pair of muddy soccer cleats by the door. Photographs dotted the walls, Ben as a toddler, Jack in his Marine uniform, and a beautiful dark-haired woman whose smile matched Ben's. Jack disappeared upstairs, returning with a stack of clothes. These were my wife's, he said, his voice momentarily thickening. Should fit well enough until yours dry. Catherine accepted them with gentle reverence, understanding the weight of what he offered. I'm sorry for your loss. Jack nodded, once the grief an old companion he'd learned to carry. Bathroom's first door on the right, towels in the cabinet. Ben, let's get some hot chocolate going. While Catherine showered, Jack and Ben moved about the kitchen in practiced synchrony. The boy measured cocoa powder, while Jack heated milk, their routine revealing years of shared domestic duties. Is she in trouble, Dad? Ben asked, his voice low, as if Catherine might hear over the running water. Jack considered how to answer, weighing honesty against protection. I think she might be, but we're just helping her get warm and dry, then figuring out next steps. Ben nodded solemnly. Like when Tim Bradley's dad got drunk and hit his mom and they stayed in Mrs. Larson's garage apartment for a while. Jack's heart tightened at his son's matter-of-fact understanding of life's darker corners. Something like that. Now you've got homework to finish, flood or no flood. Ben groaned but complied, settling at the kitchen table with his math workbook. Jack checked his phone messages from the construction foreman about tomorrow's job being postponed due to flooding, news alerts about roads closed throughout the county, but nothing that couldn't wait. Catherine emerged 20 minutes later, transformed. Angela's jeans hung slightly loose on her frame, and the simple gray sweater lacked the refinement of her earlier attire, but she carried herself with the same natural poise. Her dark hair hung damp around her shoulders, face scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing a natural beauty that needed no enhancement. I can't thank you enough, she said, accepting the steaming mug Jack offered. For everything. Jack gestured toward the living room, away from Ben's curious ears. You should probably tell me what kind of trouble followed you into my truck. Catherine hesitated, her fingers tightening around the mug. It's complicated and dangerous. You've already done more than enough, and I should go before... Before what? Jack's voice remained low but firm. For whoever's after you tracks you here, leaving now with the roads flooded and night coming doesn't seem like the best strategy. Catherine studied him, weighing her options. You were military. Not a question. Jack nodded. Marines, 12 years. How'd you know? The way you move, the way you assessed the crowd at the flood, the way you handled those paramedics. She took a careful sip of her cocoa. Force recon. Jack's eyebrows rose slightly. Yeah, not many civilians can spot that. I worked with many ex-military contractors. She glanced toward Ben, then back to Jack. I don't want to put you or your son in danger. You already have, Jack replied, without accusation. Question is whether leaving makes it better or worse. The sound of the television drew their attention. Ben had turned on the news where aerial footage showed the extent of the flooding. The reporter's voice carried into the room. At least 3 people remain unaccounted for after flash flooding swept through Oak Ridge and surrounding communities. Emergency services continue search and rescue operations as water levels slowly recede. Catherine's face paled. She set down her mug and moved to the window, carefully peering through the blinds at the street beyond. They'll think I'm one of the missing. That buys some time. Jack joined her, maintaining distance from the window to avoid being spotted from outside. Who's they, Catherine? She turned to face him, decision made. Edward Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. On paper, a Fortune 500 company specializing in defense contracts, pharmaceuticals, and technology. In reality, the front for one of the largest money laundering operations in the country. Jack processed this, keeping his expression neutral. And you know this how? I was the chief financial officer. Catherine's shoulders squared, pride and regret mingling in her posture. Harvard MBA, recruited right out of business school. Fast-tracked to the executive level by 32. I was brilliant with numbers, ambitious, and completely blind to what was really happening. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. The revelation hung between them. Jack studied her, looking for deception, but finding only exhaustion and resolve. Dad, Ben's voice cut through the tension. They're showing where the flood hit hardest. Our street is on TV. Jack moved to the couch, sitting beside his son, as Catherine remained by the window. The news showed their neighborhood water receding but damage evident. Cars displaced, debris scattered across lawns, a fallen tree crushing someone's garage. School's going to be canceled tomorrow, Ben declared with the certainty of a child who understood the priorities of disaster response. Probably, oh, Jack agreed, ruffling the boy's hair, which means extra math practice for you, oh. Ben groaned dramatically, flopping back against the cushions. The normal moment felt surreal against the backdrop of whatever conspiracy had landed in their living room. Time for bed, bud, Jack said, checking his watch. It's already past 8. Ben's protest was interrupted by a yawn he couldn't suppress. But we have a guest. And she'll still be here in the morning, Jack assured him, though he couldn't know if that was true. Go brush your teeth. I'll be up and tend to tuck you in. After Ben trudged upstairs, Jack returned to Catherine, who had moved away from the window to stand by the fireplace. Her fingers traced the edge of a framed photo, Jack, Ben, and Angela at the beach, all sunburned and smiling. He looks like you, Catherine observed. But he has her smile. Jack nodded, the familiar ache of loss present, but dulled by time. Angela died 3 years ago. Car accident on Route 16. He didn't elaborate on the drunk driver who'd crossed the center line the 3 days in the ICU before they'd said goodbye, or how he'd had to learn to be both mother and father overnight. I'm sorry, Catherine said again with the sincerity of someone who understood grief wasn't measured in platitudes. Jack moved to the kitchen, returning with 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey. He poured a finger in each and handed one to Catherine. So, Blackwood Enterprises, money laundering, and you on the run. There's more to this story. Catherine accepted the glass, taking a small sip before speaking. 6 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our international accounts. Transactions that didn't align with our reported business activities. Transfers to shell companies that existed only on paper. The financial jargon flowed naturally from her, the language of her former world. At first, I thought it was an accounting error. Then I thought maybe tax evasion. Jack leaned against the wall, listening. I started digging deeper, created a separate server to track the money flows without alerting our IT department. The more I uncovered, the worse it got. Catherine's voice hardened. Blackwood wasn't just hiding profits from the IRS. He was washing money for arms dealers, drug cartels, terrorist organizations. Billions moving through legitimate business fronts, coming out clean on the other side. Jack's military experience filled in the blanks she didn't need to verbalize. And you collected evidence. Catherine nodded. Everything I could find. Transaction records, emails, meeting notes. I was careful, or thought I was. Then 2 weeks ago, my assistant's car exploded in the company parking garage. Jack's expression darkened. They thought it was you. And they knew it wasn't. It was a message. Catherine drained her glass, her hand steady despite the horrors she described. That's when I went to the FBI, or tried to. My contact never showed for our meeting. Next day, his body was found in the Potomac. The pieces aligned in Jack's mind. So you ran. With everything I'd gathered, yes, I've been moving constantly since then. Today I was headed to meet a journalist when they found me, ran me off the road and into the flood zone. They probably thought the water finished their job. Jack refilled her glass without asking. Why not go public immediately? Send the evidence to every news outlet. Because it's not just about money laundering anymore, Catherine said, her voice dropping. Blackwood has connections everywhere, law enforcement, politics, judiciary, and his weapons end up in conflict zones worldwide, including, she hesitated, including, Jack prompted, Afghanistan, Kandahar province, 3 years ago. Catherine's eyes held his. A convoy attacked with next-generation RPGs that weren't supposed to exist outside of Blackwood's secure facilities. 14 soldiers killed. The glass in Jack's hand froze halfway to his lips, memories flooding back with brutal clarity. The explosion, the screams, the blood-soaked sand, his closest friends gone in an instant. That was my unit, he said, his voice hollow. My last deployment before discharge. Those were my brothers. Catherine nodded slowly. I know, I researched you after you pulled me from the water. Wanted to know who I was dealing with. Staff Sergeant Jack Reynolds, Force Recon, Purple Heart, Bronze Star with Valor. Honorable discharge following injuries sustained in an attack that killed 14 of your unit. Jack set down his glass untouched. You're saying Blackwood was responsible. His weapons, sold through third parties under the table. I found the transaction records. Catherine's eyes never left his. That's why this isn't just about me anymore. This is about justice for them too. The weight of her words settled over the room. Upstairs, the sound of running water indicated Ben was still awake, going through his bedtime routine, blissfully unaware of the darkness gathering below. Jack checked his watch. I need to tuck in my son. Don't go anywhere. He climbed the stairs, mind racing through military risk assessments, even as he prepared to read a bedtime story. Ben was already in bed, worn copy of The Hobbit ready on his nightstand. Is Catherine okay, Dad? Ben asked as Jack sat on the edge of the bed. Jack considered his answer carefully. She's had a rough day, but she's tough. Ben nodded, accepting this. Like Mom was. Yeah, Jack agreed, throat tightening. Like Mom was. He read 2 pages before Ben's eyelids grew heavy. Jack closed the book, pressing a kiss to his son's forehead. Sleep tight, buddy. I love you. Love you too, Ben murmured, already drifting. Jack lingered, watching his son's peaceful face. Everything he did, every nail hammered, every piece of furniture crafted, every extra shim taken was for this boy. To protect him. To give him stability after losing his mother. Now danger had walked through their door, invited by Jack's own compassion. Downstairs, Catherine had moved to the dining table, her damp coat spread before her. She was examining something small between her fingers, a tracking device no larger than a button. Found this sewn into the lining, she explained without looking up. Standard government-grade tracker. They must have planted it at the evacuation center when they gave me this coat. Jack's jaw tightened. You're saying they know where you are? If they're monitoring it actively, yes. Catherine set the device on the table. I should never have come here. I've put you both in danger. Jack moved to the window, scanning the quiet street. The rain had stopped, but puddles reflected the streetlights. No suspicious vehicles, no movement in the shadows. Yet. We need to move, he decided. Now before they have time to organize. Catherine stood. I'll go alone. You stay with Ben. And what's your plan? Jack challenged. Where will you go? Who can you trust? He didn't wait for her answer. Pack up your evidence. I'm getting Ben. He moved swiftly upstairs, gathering essentials with military efficiency. Warm clothes for Ben, the emergency cash from his closet safe, his service pistol legally registered and maintained, the medical kit from under the bathroom sink. Ben stirred when Jack lifted him, wrapping sleep arms around his father's neck. Dad, we need to go on a little trip, Jack explained quietly. Everything's okay. You can keep sleeping in the car. Downstairs, Catherine had already gathered her belongings. The tracking device remained on the table, a message to whoever would come looking. Jack transferred Ben to the back seat of his truck, covering him with a blanket. The boy mumbled something incoherent before drifting back to sleep. Catherine slid into the passenger seat, clutching a waterproof pouch that presumably contained her evidence. They pulled away from the house without headlights, only switching them on once they'd turned onto the main road. Jack drove carefully, avoiding flooded sections, taking a circuitous route out of town. "Where are we going?" Catherine asked, her voice hushed to avoid waking Ben. "I know a place," Jack replied. "Hunting cabin about 40 miles north in the woods. Off-grid. My buddy Dave and I use it during deer season. No one would connect it to me unless they dig deep." Catherine nodded, tension momentarily easing from her shoulders. Smart. The digital clock on the dashboard read 11:42 p.m. when Jack noticed the black SUV 3 cars back. It had maintained the same distance for the last 10 minutes, matching their turns through the small town of Millfield, just north of Oak Ridge. "Don't look now," Jack said evenly, "but I think we have company." Black SUV tinted windows. Catherine's body tensed, but she kept her gaze forward as instructed. "How many I found?" "Can't tell through the tint." Jack took an unexpected left turn down a residential street. The SUV continued straight, but Jack wasn't fooled. They might have split up to cover more approaches. He navigated through the quiet neighborhoods, deliberately choosing routes with multiple exits. His mind cataloged escape routes, defensive positions, potential threats, the combat awareness he'd never fully shed despite 3 years of civilian life. They reached the outskirts of town, where houses gave way to scattered farms and eventually dense forest. The road narrowed, winding through trees still dripping from the earlier downpour. No headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, but Jack remained vigilant. "In the glove compartment," he instructed Catherine. "There's a flashlight, and under your seat a hunting knife." Catherine retrieved both, setting them within easy reach. "You come prepared." Force of habit, Jack checked on Ben in the rearview mirror. The boy remained asleep, oblivious to the tension building in the front seat. They drove in silence for several miles, the only sound the hum of tires on wet asphalt and Ben's soft breathing. Jack took a sharp right onto a dirt road barely visible among the trees. The truck bounced over ruts and puddles, headlights illuminating a tunnel of dense forest on either side. "Almost there," Jack said, more to himself than Catherine. The cabin appeared around a bend, small but solid, built of dark timber with a metal roof. No electricity lines ran to it, no other structures nearby. Just wilderness stretching in all directions. Jack parked behind the cabin, concealing the truck from the road. "Wait here," he instructed, retrieving his pistol from the glove compartment before stepping out into the night. He circled the perimeter, checking for signs of recent visitors or disturbances. Finding none, he returned to the truck. "It's clear. I'll get Ben." The cabin interior smelled of pine and wood smoke from previous visits. Jack laid Ben on the small sofa, covering him with a quilt, while Catherine explored the sparse accommodations main room with kitchenette and sitting area, small bedroom, basic bathroom with pump-operated water system. Jack moved with practiced efficiency, lighting kerosene lamps and checking supplies. A cast-iron stove stood ready for heating, and cooking shelves stocked with canned goods and basic necessities. "Solar battery for charging phones," he explained, pointing to a setup near the window. "Generator out back if needed, but the noise carries. Satellite phone in that drawer for emergencies." Catherine absorbed the information, clearly impressed by the preparation. "You and Dave come here often?" "A few times a year." Jack checked the water pump, satisfied when it produced a steady stream. "After Afghanistan, I needed places where I could see threats coming. Open city streets felt too exposed." Catherine nodded in understanding. "May I see your phone? I need to check something." Jack handed it over, watching as she typed in a web address and entered a complex password. A database appeared, which she scrolled through with practiced ease. "Blackwood's security team," she explained, showing him profile images of serious-faced men, ex-military and intelligence operators mostly. This one, she pointed to a man with close-cropped gray hair and cold eyes, is Marcus Cole, former CIA, now Blackwood's head of security. "If they've realized I survived, he'll be leading the search." Jack studied the image, committing the face to memory. "Anyone else I should know?" Catherine scrolled to another profile. "Thomas Reed, former Delta, specializes in tracking. And this one, She hesitated, an emotion flickering across her face too quickly to identify James Mercer. Ex-British SAS. We were close once, before I knew what he really did for Blackwood. Jack absorbed this, noting the complexity of her past. How much do they know about what you have? They know I downloaded financial records, Catherine replied, but not about the weapons trafficking evidence or the political connections. That was stored separately. She reached into her bag, extracting a waterproof case containing a thumb drive. Everything's here, encrypted, but I have the keys. Jack nodded toward his sleeping son. We should get some rest. I'll take first watch. Catherine followed his gaze to Ben, her expression softening. He's a remarkable boy, so calm during all this. He's had practice being strong, Jack said quietly, more than any kid should need. Catherine moved toward the bedroom, pausing in the doorway. Jack, thank you. Not just for today, but for believing me, for helping when you have every reason not to. Jack's eyes met hers across the dimly lit cabin. Get some sleep, Catherine. Tomorrow will come soon enough. While Catherine rested, Jack positioned himself by the window pistol within reach. The forest stood silent and dark beyond the glass, revealing nothing of potential threats. His mind replayed the day's events, the flood, the rescue, the revelations that followed. His thoughts drifted to his fallen comrades, faces clear in his memory despite the years. If what Catherine said was true, their deaths weren't just the fortunes of war, but the result of corporate greed and corruption. Around 3 a.m., Ben stirred on the sofa, sitting up in momentary confusion. Dad, he called softly, eyes adjusting to the unfamiliar surroundings. Jack moved to his son's side. Hey, buddy, we're at the cabin. Remember how I said we needed to take a trip? Ben nodded, piecing together his fragmented memories. Because of Catherine, the lady from the flood. That's right. Jack kept his voice calm, reassuring. She needs our help for a little while. Ben considered this, his young mind processing the unusual circumstances. Is she in danger, like in my comics, when someone knows a secret that they shouldn't? Jack smiled despite the gravity of their situation. Something like that, but we're safe here and we're going to help her figure things out. Because that's what we do, Ben stated with certainty. Mom always said we help people who need it. Jack's chest tightened with pride and love. That's right, bud. That's exactly what Mom would say. Ben yawned, eyelids growing heavy again. I'm still tired. Go back to sleep, Jack encouraged, adjusting the quilt around his son's shoulders. I'll be right here. Once Ben had drifted off, Jack returned to his vigilance at the window. The pre-dawn hours passed slowly, every forest sound magnified in the stillness. A branch cracking, an owl's call, the distant rustling of nocturnal creatures. Catherine emerged from the bedroom around 6 hair, bristled from sleep, but eyes alert. She moved quietly to avoid waking Ben. Any sign of trouble? She whispered, joining Jack at the window. He shook his head. All quiet, but we should plan our next move. Catherine nodded, wrapping her arms around herself against the morning chill. I have a contact at the Washington Post, someone I trust. If I can get the evidence to her, she can publish it where Blackwood can't suppress it. And you think that will be enough? These people killed your FBI contact. What's to stop them from silencing a journalist? Because by then, copies will be everywhere, Catherine explained. My plan was always a simultaneous release media law enforcement international partners. A bomb they couldn't contain once detonated. Jack considered this. You'll need secure communications, and we'll need supplies if we're staying here. We shouldn't stay in one place too long, Catherine countered. They'll be expanding their search perimeter. Agreed, but we need a base of operations, and right now this is it. Jack stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of vigilance. I know the owner of a general store about 10 miles from here. Ex-Army. I can get supplies without raising flags. Catherine hesitated. I should go alone. From here on out, you and Ben need to get somewhere safe away from me. Jack's expression hardened. Running alone hasn't worked out well for you so far. And if what you said about those weapons is true, I have a personal stake in this now. The morning light strengthened, filtering through the trees to cast dappled patterns across the cabin floor. Ben stirred again, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. Where are we? He asked, more alert than his midnight awakening. My hunting cabin, Jack explained. Remember coming here last fall? Ben nodded, looking around with growing recognition. With Uncle Dave, we saw a deer. That's right. Jack moved to the kitchenette, assessing breakfast options. How about some oatmeal? While Jack prepared a simple breakfast, Catherine sat beside Ben on the sofa. The boy regarded her with open curiosity. My dad saved you from the water, he stated. Catherine nodded. He did. He's very brave. He was a Marine, Ben said with evident pride. They're the toughest soldiers. I believe that, Catherine agreed. He must have taught you a lot of important things. Ben nodded solemnly. How to build stuff, how to start a fire safely, how to throw a perfect spiral. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. And he says I'm not supposed to tell any, but I know how to shoot his rifle. Just in case. Catherine's expression remained neutral, despite her surprise. Your dad sounds very practical. He says being prepared isn't paranoid, it's smart. Ben recited this clearly memorized lesson with conviction. Jack returned with the 3 bowls of oatmeal, topped with dried berries from the cabin's stores. Breakfast of champions, he announced, handing them out. They ate in relative silence, the reality of their situation tempering conversation. Jack watched Catherine interact with Ben, noting her natural ease with his son, despite their circumstances. For someone from the corporate and upper echelon, she showed none of the condescension or awkwardness he might have expected. After breakfast, Jack outlined their immediate plan. I'll make a supply run, basic necessities, burner phones. Catherine, you should stay here with Ben. Catherine frowned. Is that wise, leaving Ben with a stranger? You're not a stranger anymore, Ben piped up. Dad saved you, so you're a friend now. That's how it works. Jack smiled at his son's simple logic. Ben's right, and strategically splitting up the high-value targets makes sense. They're looking for you, not a guy with his kid buying groceries. Catherine reluctantly agreed, recognizing the tactical soundness of his plan. Jack prepared to leave, checking his pistol before tucking it into his waistband at the small of his back. I won't be gone more than 2 hours. Keep the doors locked. There's a shotgun in the bedroom closet if needed. Catherine's eyes widened slightly. You trust me with a weapon around your son. I trust you not to need it, Jack replied, but I'd rather you have it than not. Before departing, Jack took Ben aside for a private word. You remember our code word, right? If anything feels wrong while I'm gone. Ben nodded seriously. Thunderstorm. That is right. You say that word to me when I get back, and I'll know something happened that made you uncomfortable. Jack squeezed his son's shoulder. But Catherine is here to help us, and we're helping her. Sometimes the right thing isn't the easy thing. Ben straightened, accepting the responsibility. I'll keep watch, Dad. Jack drove carefully, avoiding main roads where possible. The general store sat at a crossroads, serving the scattered cabins and hunting camps in the area. The owner, Frank Miller, had served 2 tours in Iraq before returning home to take over his father's business. The bell above the door jingled as Jack entered. Frank looked up from behind the counter, recognition lighting his weathered face. Jack Reynolds, bit early for hunting season, isn't it? Frank extended a hand, which Jack shook firmly. Just some father-son time at the cabin, Jack replied easily. Teaching Ben about the woods. Frank nodded approvingly. Good man. City kids these days don't know which end of a compass points north. What can I get you? Jack filled a basket with essentials, canned food, coffee, first aid supplies, batteries. He added children's aspirin, remembering Ben's occasional headaches, and a few candy bars as treats. Heard about that flood down in Oak Ridge, Frank commented as he rang up the purchases. You folks all right? Jack nodded. Missed the worst of it, had some water in the basement, but nothing serious. Lucky, Frank replied. News said they're still looking for some missing people. Shame. Jack made a non-committal sound of agreement, paying cash for his supplies. As Frank bagged the items, a news broadcast played on the small television behind the counter. Jack's attention caught on footage of the flood zone, and then Catherine's professional headshot appeared on screen. Among the missing, the reporter's voice explained, is Catherine Morgan, Chief Financial Officer of Blackwood Enterprises, whose vehicle was discovered in the floodwaters. Search and rescue operations continue, but authorities fear the worst. Frank followed Jack's gaze to the screen. Shame about that lady, executive. Pretty thing. These corporate types never expect nature to treat them same as everybody else. Jack forced a casual shrug. Guess the flood didn't discriminate. As he loaded supplies into his truck, Jack's mind raced. The official story had Catherine presumed dead, which could work in their favor if Blackwood believed it. But the public search meant legitimate authorities would be looking for her too, complicating their movements. On the return drive, Jack took an even more circuitous route, watching for any sign of surveillance or pursuit. The forest roads remained empty, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Military instinct or justified paranoia. Either way, he wouldn't ignore it. A deer bounded across the road, startling Jack from his thoughts. He braked sharply, watching the animal disappear into the trees. As he prepared to continue movement in his rearview mirror, caught his attention a flash of dark metal among the foliage. He waited, scanning the forest behind him. Nothing moved. After a long moment, he proceeded, more convinced than ever that they needed a new plan. Back at the cabin, Jack found Ben and Catherine at the small table, heads bent over what appeared to be a lesson. The important thing about survival, Catherine was saying, is prioritizing your needs. Water before food, shelter before comfort. Ben nodded seriously, taking notes in a small pad Jack recognized from his school backpack. "Class in session," Jack asked, setting down the supplies. Catherine looked up, relief crossing her features at his safe return. "Ben asked about how I survived before you found me. It seemed like a constructive topic." "Ms. Catherine knows a lot about financial stuff too," Ben added enthusiastically. "She showed me how compound interest works with pebbles." Jack raised an eyebrow at Catherine, who shrugged. "He's a quick study, and I needed the distraction." Jack began unpacking supplies, voice lowered for Catherine alone. "You're on the news, listed as missing, presumed dead in the flood. Your car was found." Catherine processed this. "Blackwood's covering his tracks, making my disappearance look like an accident." "Or he genuinely thinks you drowned," Jack suggested. "Either way, we have a potential advantage." As they organized supplies, Jack shared his concerns about being watched on the return journey. "We need a more secure location and a way to contact your journalist without exposing ourselves." Catherine considered this. "My contact, Sophia Chen, at the Washington Post, uses secure channels for sensitive sources, but I'd need access to the right equipment." "My friend Dave," Jack said after a moment's thought, "the one who shares this cabin. He's a deputy sheriff now, but he was Army intelligence before that. He might have what we need." Catherine's expression turned skeptical. "Can you trust him with this?" "Really trust him?" "With my life," Jack replied, without hesitation. "And Ben's. He's family and everything but blood." Catherine weighed this, then nodded slowly. "Make the call." Jack used the satellite phone, stepping outside for privacy. The conversation was brief and coded in the half-language of old military friends. Locations described by hunting landmarks. Time frames and fishing metaphors. An agreement formed without explicit details that might compromise either party if overheard. Upon returning, Jack found Catherine examining the thumb drive containing her evidence. "Dave will meet us," he informed her. "Not here too obvious if anyone's monitoring him. There's an old fire watchtower about 15 miles deeper into the forest. Used to be manned year-round now. It's just maintained for emergency use." Catherine nodded. "When Shaw, tomorrow morning, gives us time to prepare and him time to gather what we might need." Jack glanced at Ben, who was organizing the canned goods by type with military precision. "We should be ready to move quickly if necessary." The day passed in tense preparation. Jack checked and rechecked their supplies, cleaned his weapons, and taught Catherine the basics of the shotgun's operation. She proved a quick study, her hands steady as she practiced loading and unloading the weapon. "You've handled guns before," Jack observed. Catherine nodded. "My father believed his daughters should know how to defend themselves. Skeet shooting was a family activity at our summer house in Vermont." When Jack filed away this glimpse into her background. Rich girl rebels against family legacy to become corporate hotshot, then whistleblower. A hint of amusement crossed Catherine's features. "Not exactly. My father was self-made, construction contractor who built his way up to major commercial projects. Mother was a public defender. They believed in hard work and ethics above all." "And yet you ended up at Harvard Business School and Blackwood Enterprises." Catherine's expression darkened. "I wanted to prove myself in a world that still sees women as accessories in the boardroom. I was brilliant with numbers, ambitious, driven. Blackwood offered opportunities few other companies would. By the time I realized what was beneath the surface, I was already compromised by association. The personal revelation hung between them, creating an unexpected connection. Two people from different worlds united by a shared sense of justice and personal responsibility. Ben, oblivious to the undercurrents, approached with a deck of cards found in a drawer. "Can we play Go Fish, Mom taught me how." The simple request grounded them both. For the next hour, they played cards at the small table, creating a bubble of normalcy amid the chaos of their circumstances. Ben's laughter at Jack's exaggerated disappointment over lost rounds echoed in the cabin, a reminder of what was truly at stake. As evening approached, Jack prepared a simple dinner from their supplies. The domesticity of the scene, Catherine helping Ben set the table, Jack cooking, felt surreal against the backdrop of corporate conspiracy and danger. After dinner, Ben asked Catherine about her job, genuine curiosity overriding any sense of the topic's sensitivity. "Do you like working with numbers?" he asked, helping dry dishes as Jack washed them. Catherine considered the question with surprising seriousness. "I love the clarity of numbers. They don't lie, even when people try to make them. That's how I found the bad things happening at my company. The numbers told the truth when the words didn't." Ben nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Dad says the same thing about wood. You can't lie to wood. It knows if you're rushing or not paying attention." Catherine glanced at Jack, who continued washing dishes, pretending not to listen. "Your dad is a very wise man. He builds beautiful things," Ben continued proudly. "Tables and chairs that people pay lots of money for. He made my bed and my desk and all the shelves in our house." Jack felt Catherine's gaze but kept his attention on the dishes. His custom woodworking was a source of pride, pieces created with patience and precision in the hours after Ben went to bed. A far cry from the corporate world Catherine had inhabited, but no less valuable for its tangibility. As darkness fell, Jack secured the cabin for the night. Windows locked, entrances checked, emergency routes confirmed. He set up a rotation. He would take first watch, Catherine second, allowing them both some rest before tomorrow's meeting. Ben fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the day's events and emotional toll. Jack sat beside him briefly, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest, recommitting to memory every feature of his son's face. The responsibility of parenthood had never felt heavier nor more precious. When he emerged from checking on Ben, Catherine stood by the window, staring into the darkness beyond. "What if I'm leading them straight to you and Ben?" she asked without turning. "What if this is a mistake?" Jack moved to stand beside her, careful to stay out of direct sight from outside. "Living scared isn't living. My wife taught me that during her illness. Every day we have choices: hide or fight, run or stand. And you always choose to fight," Catherine observed. "Not always," Jack admitted. "After Angela died, I wanted to disappear. Take Ben and find some remote place where nothing could hurt us again. But that's not living either." Catherine turned to face him, moonlight casting half her face in silver. "I never meant for civilians to be involved in this, especially not a child." "Ben stopped being just a child the day his mother died," Jack said quietly. "He understands more than you think. And sometimes the most important lessons aren't the ones we plan to teach." They stood in silence, the weight of shared purpose settling between them. Beyond the window, the forest held its secrets. Whether it concealed threats or offered protection remained to be seen. "You should get some rest," Jack finally said. "I'll wake you at 2 for your shift." Catherine nodded, moving toward the bedroom. At the doorway, she paused. "Jack, if something happens to me, the evidence still needs to reach the right people. Promise me you'll make sure it does." Jack met her gaze steadily. "Nothing's going to happen to you, not on my watch." Catherine's lips curved in a tired smile. "Former Marine, always faithful." "Always," Jack confirmed, the single word carrying the weight of a vow. As midnight approached, Jack maintained his vigil by the window. The forest had grown quiet, even the nocturnal creatures seeming to sense the tension in the air. The silence itself became unsettling. Too complete, too sudden. A twig snapped somewhere to the west of the cabin. Jack's body tensed, senses heightening. Another snap closer. Deliberate movement, not wildlife. He moved silently to the table where his pistol lay, checking the chamber with practiced efficiency. The satellite phone vibrated, a text from Dave. "Abort, compromised, do not meet." Jack's blood ran cold. If Dave had been compromised, their safe haven wouldn't remain safe for long. He moved quickly to the bedroom, touching Catherine's shoulder to wake her without startling her into making noise. Her eyes opened immediately, alert despite the interrupted sleep. Jack held a finger to his lips, showing her the message on the phone. Understanding darkened her expression as she nodded, already reaching for her shoes. Ben proved harder to wake fully. Jack gathered his son in his arms, whispering urgent instructions to remain quiet. The boy blinked drowsily but complied, arms wrapping around his father's neck in implicit trust. They moved to the back door, gathering only the essentials: Jack's weapons, Catherine's evidence, water and basic survival supplies. Jack led them into the forest behind the cabin, away from the direction of the suspicious sounds, into darkness so complete they had to move by feel and memory. 100 yards from the cabin, Jack set Ben down, crouching to speak directly to his son. "Remember how we played hide and seek in these woods? We're going to play for real now. Stay close to Catherine. If we get separated, remember what I taught you about the moss on trees and the position of the stars?" Ben nodded, fear evident in his eyes but overshadowed by determination. "North is safety. Find water. Follow it downstream." "That's my boy." Jack squeezed his son's shoulder before turning to Catherine. "There's an old logging road about half a mile east. If we can reach it without being spotted, we might be able to circle back to the truck." Catherine's expression was resolute despite the danger. "And if we can't," Jack checked his pistol, again a gesture of preparation rather than nervousness, "then we adapt, survive, fight back, because that's what we do." The weight of his words settled over them as they prepared to plunge deeper into the forest, away from the approaching threat and into an uncertain future where danger and salvation might prove indistinguishable in the darkness. The forest swallowed them in darkness, each step a blind negotiation with unseen obstacles. Jack led their small group through the underbrush, one hand gripping Ben's shoulder, the other holding his pistol at the ready. Catherine followed closely, their pace slowed by the need for silence over speed. Behind them, the faint glow of flashlights bobbed between trees. Pursuit had begun. Ben stumbled over an exposed root, a small gasp escaping, before Jack steadied him. The boy's face remained resolute, despite the fear evident in his quickened breathing. They paused behind the broad trunk of an ancient oak, listening as voices carried through the night air. "Sweep east toward the road," a man commanded, his tone clipped and professional. "They can't have gone far with a kid." Jack's jaw tightened at the mention of Ben. These weren't random searchers. They knew exactly who they were hunting. He caught Catherine's eye, her expression confirming his suspicion. This was Blackwood's team, not local authorities. They continued their careful retreat, moving deeper into the forest away from the established trails. Jack's military training surfaced in each calculated movement. Staying low, using natural cover, choosing paths that would leave minimal signs of passage. The terrain grew steeper, forcing them to climb a rocky incline that would be difficult to navigate for less experienced pursuers. At the crest of the hill, Jack paused, surveying the valley below. Moonlight silvered the treetops, creating a sea of shadow and a light. No flashlights visible from this vantage point. They'd gained some distance. "We need to reach the old logging road," Jack whispered, pointing northeast. "About half a mile through that dense section." Catherine nodded, her breath forming small clouds in the cool night air. "What about Dave if they got to him?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Jack's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Dave wouldn't have compromised them willingly, which meant either coercion or worse. Ben tugged at Jack's sleeve, his voice barely audible. "Dad, there's a place we can hide. Remember the cave?" Jack felt a surge of pride through his concern. The small cave, more of an overhang really, where they'd sheltered during a sudden thunderstorm on a hiking trip last fall. It wasn't on any trail maps, discovered only through Ben's curiosity and wandering. "Good thinking, buddy." Jack squeezed his son's shoulder. "Can you find it from here?" Ben nodded solemnly, taking the lead with the confidence of a child in familiar territory. They followed the boy's sure steps through a nearly invisible game trail, descending into a ravine where a small stream trickled over moss-covered stones. The cave appeared as little more than a shadow against the rock face, hidden by a curtain of vines and shrubs. Jack pushed aside the natural camouflage, revealing a space just large enough for the three of them to sit comfortably. The ground inside was dry, protected from the elements by the overhanging rock. Once settled, Jack pulled a small flashlight from his pack, covering most of the beam with his hand to create minimal light. Ben's face appeared ghost-like in the muted glow, eyes wide but steady. "We'll rest here," Jack decided. "Catch our breath and plan our next move." Catherine unzipped her jacket, checking that the waterproof pouch containing her evidence remained secure. They found us too quickly. How Jack considered possibilities running through operational security measures they might have overlooked. The cabin was known to Dave and me. If they forced information from him, or they tracked us another way, Catherine interrupted, removing a slim device from her pocket, her satellite phone. These can be compromised. Jack took the phone, examining it before removing the battery. Smart. Anything else electronic? Catherine shook her head, but Ben reached into his pocket, producing Jack's regular cell phone. I grabbed it from the table, Dad. I thought we might need it. Jack stared at the device, momentarily stunned by the security breach and his son's thoughtfulness colliding. The phone had been powered off, but modern devices were never truly offline. Good instinct, but this could be how they tracked us, Jack explained gently, removing the battery and SIM card before breaking both in half. We'll get a new one when we're safe. Ben nodded, disappointment and understanding crossing his young features. I was trying to help. Catherine leaned forward, her voice gentle. You did help, Ben. Now we know how they might have found us, which is valuable information. The boy brightened slightly at this perspective, settling back against the cave wall. Jack distributed water and energy bars from his pack, insisting they maintain their strength despite the circumstances. As Ben chewed thoughtfully, Jack and Catherine exchanged glances loaded with unspoken concerns. We need a new plan, Catherine whispered once Ben had dozed off, exhaustion finally overcoming vigilance. Dave was our secure connection to authorities. Jack nodded, mentally mapping their options. My priority is getting Ben to safety. Then we can worry about your evidence. Catherine's expression hardened slightly. My evidence is the only thing that will provide safety in the long run. For all of us. The tension between immediate security and long-term justice hung between them, neither willing to concede. Jack broke the silence first. There's a town about 15 miles north, Coopersville, small enough to blend in, big enough for resources. I know someone there who might help if we can reach him. Another military connection. Jack shook his head. High school friend, Frank Miller. Runs the general store on the outskirts. The one I visited yesterday. Ex-Army, straight as they come. He'll let us use his phone, maybe provide transportation. Catherine considered this. 15 miles is a long hike with pursuers and a child. Which is why we'll head for the logging road first. Less than 2 miles from here. If we're lucky, we might find abandoned equipment, maybe even a vehicle. Their planning continued in hushed tones, weighing risks against necessities until Catherine's eyes grew heavy. Jack insisted she sleep while he kept watch, the familiar rhythm of night surveillance settling over him like an old uniform. The darkness outside their shelter gradually yielded to the grayish light of pre-dawn. No sounds of pursuit had reached them for hours, but Jack remained cautious. False security killed more effectively than visible threats. He gently woke Catherine and Ben as the first birds began their morning calls. Both stirred quickly, the events of the previous night rushing back to replace momentary confusion. We move now, Jack instructed. Dawn provides just enough light to navigate without making us easy targets. They emerged from the cave into the misty morning, the forest transformed by soft light filtering through canopy layers. Jack oriented himself using the rising sun and the stream's direction, plotting their course toward the logging road. The hike proved challenging, particularly for Ben. The terrain alternated between steep inclines and marshy lowlands where yesterday's floodwaters had settled. Jack carried his son during the most difficult stretches, ignoring the protest in his own muscles. Catherine matched their pace without complaint, her determination evident in the set of her jaw. By mid-morning, they reached the abandoned logging road, little more than twin ruts carved through the forest, reclaimed by nature after years of disuse. Jack chose their direction based on memory and instinct, heading northwest toward where the road might intersect with more maintained routes. The exposed position of the road made Jack uneasy, but the easier terrain allowed them to increase their pace. Ben's energy renewed with the less demanding walk, his natural resilience emerging as he began to treat their flight as an adventure rather than a threat. Dad, look, Ben called softly, pointing ahead where the road curved around a hill. Is that a building? Jack followed his son's gesture, spotting the weathered structure partially hidden by overgrowth. An old logging camp storage shed, its metal roof rusted, but intact wooden walls grayed with age. Good eye, buddy, and Jack acknowledged, approaching cautiously. The building showed no signs of recent use. Spiderwebs stretched undisturbed across the doorframe, and a family of mice scattered from beneath the wooden steps as they approached. Inside, dusty equipment lined the walls, hand tools, spare parts for machinery, and in the corner, something that drew Jack's immediate attention, an old ATV under a tarp abandoned when the logging operation ceased. "Might be our lucky day," Jack murmured, pulling back the tarp to reveal a four-wheeler in surprisingly decent condition. He checked the gas tank, nearly empty but not completely dry. The battery would likely be dead after years of disuse, but with proper motivation and knowledge, that obstacle could be overcome. Catherine surveyed the find with cautious optimism. "Can you get it running?" Jack was already examining the engine, mentally cataloging what needed attention. "With some work and improvisation. There's a hand pump over there for the parent containers. Check if any still have fuel." While Jack worked on the ATV, Catherine and Ben searched the shed for useful supplies. Ben approached his assigned task with the seriousness of a mission-critical operation, carefully inspecting storage cabinets and shelves. "Dad," Ben called excitedly from a back corner, "I found gasoline and it doesn't smell old." Jack joined his son, examining the three metal containers Ben had discovered. Unlike the dust-covered equipment surrounding them, these showed signs of recent handling. The implications sent warning signals through Jack's combat-trained senses. "Someone's been using this place," he concluded, checking the gasoline, which indeed appeared fresh. "Recently." Catherine immediately moved to the doorway, scanning the surrounding forest for signs of movement. "Hunters, Forest Service, or our pursuers already found this location." Jack added the darker possibility. "We should hurry." The discovery lent urgency to their work. Jack used the fresh gasoline to fill the ATV's tank while simultaneously addressing the mechanical issues. Years in the military had taught him to repair vehicles under far worse conditions. Catherine helped where she could, following Jack's instructions with quick competence. The battery, as expected, was dead. Jack located a manual starter cord in the shed supplies, installing it as a replacement for the electrical system. After several forceful pulls, the engine coughed reluctantly to life, blue smoke sputtering from the exhaust before settling into a rough but functional idle. "It's loud," Catherine observed, concern evident in her voice. "They'll hear us coming." Jack nodded grimly. "Can't be helped. Speed over stealth now." The ATV had a small rear cargo platform where Ben could sit, holding onto his father's waist. Catherine would ride behind Jack, maintaining the close formation that had kept them safe thus far. Before departing, Jack gathered potentially useful items from the shed: rope, a tarp, a first aid kit with unexpired supplies, and a hunting knife sharper than the one he carried. As Jack made final preparations, Ben tugged at Catherine's sleeve, expression serious. "Are the bad men going to catch us?" Catherine crouched to meet the boy's eyes, her corporate polish momentarily replaced by genuine connection. "Not if we can help it. Your dad is very smart and very brave, and so are you." Ben considered this assessment, nodding slowly. "Mom used to say courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right, even when you are scared." Catherine's expression softened, recognizing the wisdom preserved through a lost parent's teachings. "Your mom sounds like she was very wise." "She was the best," Ben confirmed solemnly. "Dad says I have her heart and his stubborn head." The moment of connection broke as Jack announced they were ready to depart. The ATV rumbled beneath them as they navigated the overgrown logging road, Jack keeping the speed moderate to manage the uneven terrain while listening for sounds of pursuit over the engine's noise. They traveled for nearly an hour, the logging road eventually connecting with a more maintained Forest Service route. Jack's internal compass and familiarity with the region guided their choices at each intersection, always moving toward Coopersville while avoiding main roads where they might be easily spotted. The ATV's gas gauge dipped toward empty as they reached the outskirts of civilization. Scattered farmhouses appearing through the trees, followed by power lines, and eventually paved roads. Jack steered them through back routes, finally stopping in a copse of trees overlooking Frank Miller's general store. From their vantage point, Jack observed the store for signs of surveillance or unusual activity. The gravel parking lot contained only two vehicles: Frank's faded blue pickup truck and an unfamiliar sedan that likely belonged to a customer. The store appeared to be operating normally, the open sign visible in the window. "We'll approach carefully," Jack decided. "Catherine, you and Ben wait here while I make contact with Frank. If anything seems wrong, I'll return immediately and we'll find another option." Catherine's hand closed around his forearm. "Be careful. If Blackwood's people got to your friend Dave, They might have information about Frank too. The concern was valid, reinforcing Jack's caution as he made his way down the hillside toward the store. He circled the building, checking for surveillance cameras or positioned observers, finding nothing suspicious. Still, years of combat operations had taught him that absence of evidence wasn't evidence of absence. Jack entered through the front door, the familiar bell announcing his arrival. Frank looked up from behind the counter, surprise registering at Jack's disheveled appearance. Jack wasn't expecting to see you again so soon. Everything all right at the cabin? Jack assessed his old friend's body language and expression, finding no indication of duress or deception. Need to talk privately, Frank. Got a situation. Understanding immediately darkened Frank's features. He turned to the elderly customer, examining canned goods. Mrs. Harlow, I'll be just a minute, helping Jack with something in the back. You take your time. In the store's small storage room, Jack provided a condensed version of events: the flood rescue, Catherine's identity, and evidence the pursuit, Dave's compromised status. Frank listened without interruption, the military efficiency of information exchange requiring no dramatic embellishments. Jesus, Jack. Frank exhaled when the explanation concluded. You stepped in it this time. Jack couldn't argue with the assessment. Need transportation. Something that can't be traced to me or you, and a secure way to contact authorities Catherine trusts. Frank rubbed his jaw, thinking. Got an old delivery van out back. Previous owner painted over the store logo but never registered it in his name. Been sitting there since I bought him out 3 years ago. Engine runs, though not pretty. Perfect, Jack nodded. In communications? Landline's not secure enough, Frank decided, but I've got a satellite phone I use during hunting season when cell service fails. Untraceable if you use it briefly. Jack clasped his friend's shoulder, gratitude evident. I need to bring my son and Catherine here. We haven't eaten properly since yesterday. Frank nodded. Go, I'll prepare some food and get the van ready. Jack returned to the hillside where Catherine and Ben waited anxiously. Ben's face brightened at his father's approach, the hours of tension momentarily lifting. Frank's clear, Jack reported. He's preparing transportation and communications. And food. Ben's expression brightened further at the last item, prompting a small smile from Catherine despite the circumstances. They made their way cautiously to the store's rear entrance, avoiding the front where they might be seen by customers. Inside the storage room, Frank had assembled sandwiches, fruit, and bottles of water. Ben fell upon the food with the enthusiasm of a growing boy too long denied proper meals, while the adults ate more measuredly, energy conservation taking priority over satisfaction. The van's fueled up, Frank informed them between bites. Left-use supplies in the back, blankets, more food, first aid kit, flashlights. In this, he produced a satellite phone from his pocket for secure communications. Batteries full, but use it sparingly. Jack accepted the device with appreciation for his friend's thoroughness. We need to contact Catherine's journalist connection securely, and I want to check on Dave, make sure he's alive. Frank's expression grew grim. Already did some checking while you were fetching your people. Called a buddy at the sheriff's department, casual-like, asking if Dave was around. They said he called in sick today. No one's seen him since yesterday afternoon. The news settled heavily over the room. Dave could be in hiding, injured, or worse. The uncertainty added another layer of urgency to their situation. Catherine used the satellite phone to send a coded message to her Washington Post contact, arranging a secure meeting. The journalist responded almost immediately, confirming a location in Cumberland, Maryland, about 3 hours' drive from their current position. Cumberland? Jack questioned. Why there? Neutral ground, Catherine explained. Not so small we'd stand out, not so large we'd get lost in bureaucracy if something goes wrong. And Sophie has contacts at the local FBI field office. People she trusts aren't compromised. Their planning session was interrupted by the store's bell jingling. Frank peered through the storage room door crack, then quickly stepped back, face pale. Black SUV just pulled up. 2 men in suits looking very federal, or very not federal, if you get my meaning. Jack's body tensed, combat readiness flooding his system. Description: one tall, gray hair, military bearing. The other younger, built like a linebacker. Catherine's breath caught. Marcus Cole and probably Thomas Reed, Blackwood's top security people. Frank pointed to the rear exit. Delivery van's behind the dumpster. Keys in the ignition. I'll stall them. Jack gripped his friend's shoulder. They are dangerous, Frank. Do not take risks. Frank's expression hardened, the former soldier visible beneath the shopkeeper. Just get your boy and the lady to safety. I can handle myself. No time remained for debate. Jack ushered Catherine and Ben toward the exit while Frank returned to the main store, the bell announcing the new customer's entry as the storage room door closed. They slipped out the back crossing quickly to the faded blue delivery van, partially hidden behind a large dumpster. The vehicle had seen better days. Rust spots freckled the wheel wells, and the once white paint had yellowed with age. But it offered anonymity more valuable than aesthetics. Jack helped Ben into the back, where Frank had created a makeshift bed from blankets, then took the driver's seat while Catherine rode shotgun literally. Frank had left a loaded 12-gauge beneath the passenger seat, a silent acknowledgement of potential dangers ahead. The van started on the first try, the engine's rumble louder than ideal but functional. Jack navigated around the building's rear, avoiding the main lot where the black SUV was parked. Through the store's windows, he glimpsed Frank engaged in animated conversation with the two men gesturing widely, as if giving complicated directions. They reached the road without being spotted, Jack choosing the route leading away from town, toward the interstate that would eventually take them to Cumberland. The van handled poorly compared to his truck, the suspension protesting each bump and curve, but it moved steadily forward at distance, gradually building between them and their pursuers. Ben had fallen asleep in the rusted exhaustion, finally overcoming the adrenaline that had sustained him. Catherine watched the boy with concern evident in her expression. He's holding up remarkably well, she observed quietly. But this isn't fair to him. Jack's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Very little about life has been fair to him. His mother's death, now this, but he's strong, resilient. Like his father, Catherine noted, studying Jack's profile. You've raised an extraordinary child under difficult circumstances. The simple acknowledgement touched something deep in Jack's chest. The constant doubt that plagued single parents, wondering if they were enough, if their children were silently suffering beneath brave facades. Tell me about her, Catherine requested softly. Your wife, Ben's mother. Jack rarely spoke about Angela with anyone besides Ben. The memories remained both precious and painful, reserved through careful rationing of recollection. Yet something about their shared danger and Catherine's genuine interest breached his usual reserve. Angela was a force of nature, he began, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Kindergarten teacher. Could control a room of 35-year-olds with a raised eyebrow. Laughed easier than anyone I've ever known. Fought like hell against the cancer, not out of fear of dying, but fear of leaving Ben without a mother. Catherine absorbed this, respecting the significance of what he shared. He has her smile. I noticed in the photographs at your house. Jack nodded, a ghost of that same smile briefly touching his features. And her kindness, her ability to see the best in people. The conversation lapsed into comfortable silence as the van continued its journey. Jack maintained a vigilant watch for pursuit, taking secondary roads where possible while still making progress toward Cumberland. 2 hours into their drive, Ben awoke, climbing carefully into the space between the front seats. Are we still running from the bad men? Jack reached over to ruffle his son's hair. We're heading somewhere safe now, a place where Catherine's friend can help us. Ben nodded, accepting this with the adaptability of childhood. I'm hungry again. Catherine reached for the supplies Frank had provided, offering Ben a granola bar and juice box. The boy accepted, gratefully settling cross-legged on the floor between them as he ate. How much longer till we get there? Ben asked between bites. About an hour, Jack estimated. Maybe a little more. Ben considered this time frame with the seriousness of a military strategist. Will I still have to go to school tomorrow? The innocence of the question, normality asserting itself amid chaos, nearly broke Jack's carefully maintained composure. Catherine rescued him with a gentle laugh. I think you've earned a few days off school for special circumstances, she assured Ben. But maybe we can work on some math problems together to keep your skills sharp. Ben groaned dramatically, but without real protest. Miss Catherine knows a lot about numbers, Dad. She showed me how compound interest works. Did she now? Jack glanced at Catherine with newfound appreciation. Few adults could explain financial concepts to a 9-year-old effectively. It's like plant growth, Ben explained enthusiastically. The more leaves a plant has, the more sunlight it catches, so it grows even more leaves. Catherine shrugged modestly at Jack's impressed expression. I find concrete metaphors work better than abstractions, even in the boardroom. Their moment of normalcy shattered as Jack checked the rearview mirror, noticing a black sedan maintaining consistent distance behind them for the past several miles. Too consistent to be coincidence. We may have company, he warned quietly, nodding toward the mirror. Catherine turned as if stretching, assessing the vehicle with practiced casualness. Can't confirm it's them, but we should assume the worst. Jack evaluated their options, mentally mapping the surrounding area. Bend back to your spot and buckle in. Things might get bumpy. The boy complied immediately, recognizing the shift in his father's tone. Catherine secured her own seatbelt as Jack increased their speed, testing the pursuing vehicle's reaction. The sedan accelerated in response, confirming Jack's suspicions. How did they find us? Catherine questioned, gripping the dashboard as Jack took a sharp turn onto a side road. Could have tracked the satellite phone, Jack reasoned. Or they got information from Frank willingly or otherwise. The pursuit intensified as the sedan gained ground on the less powerful delivery van. Jack's military training surfaced in his driving. Unpredictable patterns using terrain advantages, creating distance where possible. There's a railway crossing ahead, Jack recalled from previous trips through the area. If my timing's right, he pushed the van to its limits, engine protesting as they approached the crossing. In the distance, the warning lights began flashing, gates lowering as a freight train approached from the east. Jack will never make it, Catherine warned, eyes wide as the train's horn blared. We will, Jack insisted, foot heavy on the accelerator. But they won't. The van shot through the crossing seconds before the gates fully lowered the train's massive engine, appearing around the bend. Their pursuers faced an impossible choice: attempt the increasingly dangerous crossing or wait for the lengthy freight train to pass, losing their quarry. In the rearview mirror, Jack watched the sedan brake hard, stopping just short of the lowered gates as the train thundered past. A temporary victory, but valuable time gained. That was close. Catherine exhaled, tension evident in her voice despite the successful maneuver. Calculated risk, Jack corrected. I wouldn't have attempted it if I wasn't certain of the timing. Ben peered out the rear window, watching the train block their pursuers. That was awesome, Dad. Despite the gravity of their situation, Jack couldn't suppress a small smile at his son's assessment. The boy's resilience continued to amaze him, finding adventure where adults saw only danger. With the immediate pursuit thwarted, Jack returned to main roads, knowing they needed to reach Cumberland before their hunters could organize a broader search. The van ate up miles as they crossed into Maryland forest, gradually giving way to more populated areas. Cumberland appeared on the horizon, a small city nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, its industrial past evident in the architecture, even as revitalization efforts brought new life to its downtown. Jack navigated toward the meeting point Catherine had arranged, a public library with multiple exits and enough foot traffic to provide cover without overwhelming surveillance challenges. They parked 2 blocks away, assessing the surroundings before proceeding. No sign of the black sedan or other suspicious vehicles, but Jack remained vigilant, awareness heightened by their earlier close call. The meeting's inside at the second-floor research room, Catherine explained. Sophie said she'd have a representative from the FBI present, someone she trusts implicitly. Jack considered the operational security implications. I don't like Ben being exposed. The children's section is on the first floor, Catherine suggested. He could wait there while we meet upstairs. Public enough to be safe, but separated from the sensitive discussion. The compromise seemed reasonable, though Jack's protective instincts rebelled against any separation from his son. They approached the library casually, attempting to project the appearance of a family on a normal outing, despite their travel-worn appearance. Inside, the library offered welcome normalcy, patrons browsing shelves, students studying at tables, a children's story hour just concluding in a colorful corner section. Jack led Ben to the children's area, finding a table with good sightlines to the entrance and minimal exposure. I need you to stay right here, Jack instructed his son. Catherine and I have to talk to some people upstairs, but we won't be long. Ben nodded seriously. Is this like when you tell me to wait in the truck when you're picking up supplies from dangerous places? Jack winced internally at his son's accurate assessment of past situations. Something like that, but you'll be safer here surrounded by people. I'll read my book, Ben decided, pulling a paperback from his small backpack. The copy of The Hobbit Jack had been reading to him, rescued during their hasty departure from home. Jack ruffled his son's hair, pride and concern warring in his chest. We won't be long. If anything feels wrong, thunderstorm, Ben recited their code words solemnly, with a final reassuring squeeze of his son's shoulder. Jack followed Catherine to the stairs leading to the second floor. The research room was easily located, a glass-walled space containing large tables and reference materials partially occupied by serious-looking students and researchers. In the far corner, a woman with short black hair and rectangular glasses looked up from her laptop, eyes fixing on Catherine with recognition. Beside her sat a man in his 50s, his unremarkable suit and controlled posture, screaming federal agent despite the lack of visible identification. Catherine led the way across the room, her stride purposeful but unhurried. Jack followed slightly behind, positioning himself to maintain sightlines to both the room's entrance and the stairs leading to the children's section. Sophie, Catherine greeted the journalist with restrained relief. Thank you for coming. The woman stood embracing Catherine briefly before turning to Jack with evaluating eyes. You must be the Marine who saved her life, twice from what I understand. Jack offered a terse nod, attention already shifting to the man who had risen from his seat. And you are, Special Agent Robert Collins, the man replied, voice pitched low. FBI counterintelligence. Ms. Chen has shared some concerning allegations that align with an ongoing investigation. Jack assessed the agent with military precision, noting the subtle bulge of a shoulder holster, the agency's standard haircut, the watchful eyes that never stopped scanning the room. Everything appeared legitimate, but recent events had severely damaged Jack's trust in official credentials. Catherine has the evidence, Jack stated, keeping his position between her and the newcomers. But before anything changes hands, I need verification that this isn't another trap. Sophie Chen raised an eyebrow, but Agent Collins nodded with professional understanding. Reasonable precaution. Ms. Chen suggested you might have concerns about insider threats. The agent reached slowly into his jacket, producing not a badge, but a folded newspaper clipping. Your friend, Deputy David Mitchell, is alive, currently in protective custody at Mercy Hospital in Harrisburg. This was his idea, said you'd remember the significance. Jack accepted the clipping. A 5-year-old sports page highlighting a local baseball championship. Dave had pitched the winning game a moment they'd celebrated together with perhaps too many beers. The kind of personal detail that wouldn't appear in any official file. The tension in Jack's shoulders eased slightly. He's really alive. Concussion, broken ribs, various contusions, Collins confirmed. But he'll recover. He managed to send a warning before they could extract information about your location. Relief washed through Jack, tempering the wariness that had become his constant companion. Dave had survived, had maintained operational security even under duress. One less weight in on his conscience. Catherine placed her waterproof pouch on the table, unsealing it carefully to reveal the thumb drive and supporting documents. Everything's here. Financial records documenting money laundering through Blackwood Enterprises' international subsidiaries. Weapons sales to restricted entities. Bribery of government officials, both domestic and foreign. Sophie connected the drive to her laptop, encryption keys rapidly exchanged as Catherine provided access. The journalist's eyes widened as she scanned the initial documents, professional composure momentarily cracking. This is extraordinary, she murmured. The scope is beyond what you described. Agent Collins reviewed the material over her shoulder, expression hardening with each new revelation. This confirms suspicions we've had for years but couldn't prove. Blackwood's connections made investigation nearly impossible without ironclad evidence. Jack remained vigilant while the others examined the files, his attention divided between the room's entrance and the proceedings at the table. Something pricked at his combat instincts, a sensation he'd learned never to ignore in Afghanistan. The meeting was proceeding too smoothly, the validation too convenient. His gaze drifted to the window overlooking the street below, catching a glimpse of movement that confirmed his unease. A black sedan pulling up directly in front of the library, followed by an unmarked van with tinted windows. We have company, Jack interrupted, his tone instantly shifting the atmosphere around the table. Blackwood's people are outside. Collins moved immediately to the window, professional assessment, replacing his previous focus on the evidence. 4 men from the sedan, 2 more from the van. Standard tactical approach formation. Catherine's face paled. How did they find us? The satellite phone was off the van's untraceable. Jack's mind raced through possibilities before landing on the most obvious. Ben! Without waiting for response, Jack headed for the stairs, taking them two at a time as he descended to the children's section. His son remained at the table where he'd left him, still reading his book, apparently undisturbed. Relief coursed through Jack, immediately followed by renewed vigilance as he scanned for threats. "Time to go, buddy," Jack announced, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the urgency burning through him. "Right now." Ben closed his book without question, recognizing the command tone in his father's voice. "Are the bad men here?" "Yes, but we have a head start." Jack guided his son toward the library's rear exit, speaking into the satellite phone he'd switched back on. "Catherine, meet us at the loading dock. Bring Collins and Chen. If they're with us, no one else." The library's back hallways wound past administrative offices and storage rooms, Jack's sense of direction guiding them toward where deliveries would logically arrive. Ben kept pace admirably, asking no questions as they navigated the unfamiliar territory. They emerged onto a small concrete platform where library deliveries were received, a single van parked in the designated space. Catherine appeared moments later, accompanied by both Sophie and Agent Collins. "My car's 2 blocks north," Sophie offered immediately. "Underground garage with multiple exits." Collins had his weapon drawn, scanning the loading area for threats. "I've called for backup, but they're at least 15 minutes out. We need to move now." Jack assessed their options, weighing risk factors against escape routes. "Sophie, take Catherine and the evidence. Different direction from us. Ben and I will create a diversion." Catherine immediately protested. "No, we stay together. I won't let you and Ben risk yourselves as decoys." "It's not a discussion," Jack replied, voice firm. "The evidence is what matters now. Ben and I can disappear more effectively on our own." Collins interrupted their debate. "Movement at the south entrance. They're sweeping the building systematically." The decision crystallized with tactical clarity. Jack turned to Catherine, his expression brooking no argument. "This isn't about you or me anymore. It's about stopping Blackwood. Go with Sophie. Get the evidence published. That's how you protect us all in the end." Catherine's resistance crumbled under the weight of his logic, though pain registered clearly in her eyes. She knelt quickly before Ben, placing her hands on his shoulders. "You're the bravest boy I've ever met," she told him, voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Take care of your dad for me." Ben nodded solemnly. He needs someone to remind him to eat vegetables. The simple statement drew unexpected laughter from all of them, a moment of humanity amid the tactical calculations. Catherine rose, meeting Jack's gaze with unspoken meaning. "This isn't goodbye," she stated with quiet determination. "It's a tactical separation." Jack allowed himself the briefest smile at her adoption of military terminology. "Exactly, now go." Sophie led Catherine toward a side gate that would take them through an adjacent alley, while Collins positioned himself to cover their departure. Jack turned his attention to the delivery van parked at the loading dock. "Can you hotwire it?" Collins asked, noting Jack's assessment of the vehicle. "Won't need to," Jack replied, spotting the keys hanging on a magnetic holder inside the driver's side door. Standard practice for vehicles that rarely left library property. Collins nodded approvingly. "I'll delay them here as long as possible. Give you time to clear the area." Jack clasped the agent's shoulder briefly, acknowledging the risk the man was taking. Dave would appreciate that. With Ben secured in the passenger seat, Jack started the library van, its municipal logo providing a thin veneer of legitimacy as they pulled away from the loading dock. In the side mirror, he glimpsed Collins taking up a defensive position, service weapon ready but concealed. The van merged into afternoon traffic, Jack navigating away from the library while avoiding major arteries where pursuit would have advantage. Ben remained quiet beside him, understanding instinctively that questions could wait until they reached safety. "Are Catherine and her friend going to be okay?" Ben finally asked as they crossed the city limits heading west into the mountains. Jack considered how to answer truthfully without increasing his son's anxiety. "They have a good plan and people helping them, and the bad men will focus on following us instead." Ben processed this, his young face serious. "Because we're the decoy, like in chess, when you sacrifice a piece to protect the queen." The analogy struck Jack with unexpected force, his son's perception cutting to the heart of their tactical position. "That's very insightful, buddy, except we're not being sacrificed. We're executing a strategic withdrawal." Ben accepted this reframing, looking out the window at the passing landscape. Where are we going now? Jack had been considering their options since leaving Cumberland, evaluating safe locations against the resources available. We're going to see Uncle Mike in Pittsburgh. Your friend from the Marines. Ben's face brightened slightly. The one with the motorcycles. Jack nodded, hoping his former squad mate would welcome their unexpected arrival. Mike Delaney had left the Marines a year before Jack, establishing a motorcycle repair shop in Pittsburgh's industrial district. More importantly, he had connections with local law enforcement and a natural suspicion of authority that might prove valuable in their current circumstances. As they climbed into the Appalachian foothills, Jack maintained vigilance for pursuit while plotting their route to Pittsburgh. The city offered anonymity through population density, potential allies through Jack's connections, and distance from the immediate search area around Cumberland. Ben drifted into uneasy sleep beside him, the emotional and physical toll of their ordeal finally overwhelming even his remarkable resilience. Jack watched his son's peaceful expression, renewed determination, strengthening his resolve. They would survive this. They would find a way through, not just for Catherine's evidence or justice for fallen comrades, but for Ben's future, a life unmarred by the shadow of powerful men who placed profit above humanity. The van continued westward as afternoon yielded to evening, carrying its precious cargo toward an uncertain reception, but with unwavering purpose. Behind them, events in Cumberland would determine whether their separation from Catherine had achieved its objective, whether the evidence would reach the public and authorities capable of acting on it. Jack drove into the gathering darkness, his military training maintaining alert awareness, even as his mind processed the events that had transformed their lives in less than 48 hours. From a simple act of courage during a flood to fugitives in a conspiracy spanning corporate boardrooms and government offices, the trajectory seemed impossible, yet unfolded with the inexorable logic of a tactical operation gone sideways. One certainty remained amid the chaos: Jack would protect his son at all costs. Everything else, even justice for his fallen brothers, even the undeniable connection forming with Catherine, remained secondary to that primal imperative. The delivery van carried them forward each mile, increasing the distance from immediate danger while bringing them closer to the next critical decision point in their evolving strategy for survival. The Chevelle ate up miles of empty road as Jack drove through the pre-dawn darkness, his mind processing the events of Cumberland. The library van had served its purpose, abandoned at a truck stop outside Pittsburgh, after Mike had helped them make the switch to the classic muscle car. Ben slept in the back seat, somehow finding peace, despite everything they had endured since the flood. Jack checked the rearview mirror, still clear, but experience had taught him that absence of visible pursuit didn't guarantee safety. Mike's unexpected call had disrupted their original plan to seek shelter at his motorcycle shop. News of shots fired at the Cumberland Library had made national headlines, with a bolo issued for a woman matching Catherine's description. More concerning was the complete absence of Dave from the Mercy Hospital records, contradicting Agent Collins' assurances. The FBI agent who'd seemed so convincing was likely part of Blackwood's extensive network of influence. Jack had initially resisted Mike's insistence on an immediate rendezvous point change, but his friend's urgent tone left no room for debate. "They're closing the net, Jack. My contacts say there's a multi-agency alert with your description attached, but I've got a place that they won't think to look." That place turned out to be a warehouse conversion in Pittsburgh's industrial district, one of Mike's properties, held under a corporate name, with no connection to him personally. The freight elevator carried them to a loft that reflected Mike's personality, meticulously organized tools alongside military memorabilia and high-end motorcycle models. Far more secure than the shop, which was likely already under surveillance. Now, hours after their midnight arrival, Jack stood at the kitchen island while Mike worked his laptop, digitally mining for information through channels that operated beyond official systems. Ben remained asleep on the leather sectional exhaustion, finally overcoming the adrenaline that had sustained him through their escape. "Nothing from Cumberland PD about Catherine or the journalist," Mike reported, voice low to avoid waking Ben. "But there's chatter about a federal agent wounded in the library confrontation. Could be Collins, could be legitimate FBI responding to Blackwood's team." Jack absorbed this, calculating implications. If Catherine and Sophie Chen escaped, they'll try to publish the evidence immediately. It's their only protection now. "And yours," Mike added, eyes never leaving the screen. Once that evidence goes public, killing you becomes more liability than asset for Blackwood. You'd be a martyr instead of a loose end. The tactical assessment aligned with Jack's own thinking. Their temporary safety hinged on Catherine's success. If she'd been captured, if the evidence was compromised, they would need a completely different strategy, new identities, international movement, permanent disappearance. Ben can't live his life on the run, Jack said, the mere thought sending a wave of protective fury through him. He deserves normal, school, friends, little league. Mike glanced toward the sleeping boy. Kid's resilient. Reminds me of you after your first firefight, scared but steady. The comparison landed with unexpected weight. Jack had joined the Marines seeking purpose and found brotherhood, discipline, meaning. Ben had those things torn from him by circumstances beyond his control, yet faced each new challenge with courage that humbled his father. What happens when this is over? Mike asked, closing his laptop. Assuming Catherine's evidence sticks, assuming Blackwood goes down, what then? The question penetrated deeper than Mike likely intended. Jack had been operating in survival mode since pulling Catherine from the flood, each decision tactical rather than strategic. The future beyond immediate danger remained unexamined. Rebuild, Jack finally answered. Whatever that looks like. Ben needs stability. I'll give him that even if it means starting over somewhere new. Mike nodded, understanding the unspoken complexity. Jack's life in Oak Ridge, the house he'd renovated, the workshop where he crafted furniture, the community that had supported them after Angela's death, all potentially sacrificed to ensure Ben's safety. And Catherine, Mike asked the question deceptively casual. Jack's relationship with Catherine defied simple categorization. Forced intimacy through shared danger, unexpected connection through common purpose. Something was growing between them that transcended their circumstances, but examining it felt premature, while survival remained uncertain. One bridge at a time, Jack replied, turning toward the window to scan the street below. The conversation paused as Ben stirred, sitting up with the momentary disorientation of waking in an unfamiliar place. His eyes found Jack, immediately a lifetime of trust evident in how quickly tension left his small frame once he confirmed his father's presence. Morning, buddy. Jack moved to the couch, the weight of protection and love overwhelming in that moment. How'd you sleep? Ben rubbed his eyes, taking in their surroundings with the analytical gaze that reminded Jack so much of Angela. Uncle Mike's place has cool stuff. His attention fixed on the motorcycle models in the display case. Those are collectibles, Mike explained, joining them with a glass of orange juice for Ben. Limited editions. Some of them aren't even made anymore. Ben accepted the juice with polite thanks, his next question piercing through adult pretense with childlike directness. Did the bad men find us again? Jack met his son's eyes, honesty winning over protection. Not yet, but we're being careful. Uncle Mike is helping us figure out our next move. The boy nodded, processing this with remarkable calm. Is Catherine okay? The question revealed how quickly Catherine had become important to Ben, another adult who had shown him respect and kindness, who had connected with him despite their extraordinary circumstances. We're waiting to hear, Jack answered truthfully. She's very smart and very brave. Remember how she figured out about the tracking device in her coat? She knows how to stay safe. Ben seemed satisfied with this assessment, turning his attention to more immediate concerns. I'm hungry. Mike laughed, tension breaking momentarily. I've got that covered. How do pancakes sound? While Mike prepared breakfast, Jack checked the burner phone he'd been given, willing it to ring with news from Catherine. The Washington Post should have published by now if she'd reached them successfully with the evidence. Every hour without confirmation increased the probability of failure. The meal passed with forced normalcy, Mike entertaining Ben with sanitized stories from their military days, while Jack monitored the street through the window. No suspicious vehicles, no tactical positioning visible from their vantage point. Yet the sensation of being hunted persisted, an intuition honed through combat deployments that had saved his life more than once. After breakfast, Mike returned to information gathering, while Jack helped Ben shower and change into clean clothes. Mike had procured slightly too large, but functional. The boy accepted each new development with remarkable adaptability, finding moments of joy despite their circumstances. Currently, he sat cross-legged before Mike's bookshelf, examining a technical manual on motorcycle restoration with genuine interest. Jack's attention snapped to Mike when his friend abruptly straightened, eyes fixed on his laptop screen. "Breaking news," he announced, voice tight with controlled excitement. "Washington Post just dropped the story." Jack moved immediately to Mike's side, reading over his shoulder. The headline blazed in bold typography: "Exclusive Blackwood Enterprises implicated in massive financial fraud, illegal weapon sales." Relief crashed through Jack's system, so powerful it nearly buckled his knees. Catherine had succeeded. The evidence was public beyond Blackwood's ability to suppress. The article named her explicitly as the whistleblower, detailed the scope of corruption spanning a decade, and outlined the multiple federal agencies opening investigations based on her documentation. "She did it?" Jack breathed, scanning the article for specific details about Catherine's current status. "Does it say where she is now?" Mike scrolled through the extensive coverage. "Nothing specific about her location." "Smart move keeping that classified while Blackwood's still at large." The article confirmed Dave's fate, listing him as missing and presumed dead after assisting Catherine's escape. The pain of losing his friend mingled with pride in Dave's final actions, maintaining operational security, even under duress, sending warning before Blackwood's team could extract information. Most surprising him was the article's reference to a second, unnamed former military individual believed to have helped Morgan escape Blackwood's security team, who was being sought by authorities for his protection. Jack recognized Catherine's strategy, immediately making him visible enough to prevent quiet elimination without explicitly naming him and exposing Ben. "She's protecting us," Jack noted, unexpected emotion tightening his throat, "making us too public to disappear without questions." Mike nodded in agreement. Classic countermeasure against black operations. Hard to make someone vanish when their existence is already documented in national media. A notification sound drew their attention back to the screen, breaking news updates appearing in real time. FBI raids Blackwood corporate headquarters in New York. Edward Blackwood not found on premises. Authorities issue warrant for his arrest. The development complicated their immediate security. Blackwood himself, now a fugitive, likely operating from contingency plans established long before Catherine's evidence became public. A cornered predator with significantly reduced but still dangerous resources. He'll run, Mike predicted, military assessment, instinctive. Private jet to a non-extradition country, numbered accounts already established. Men like him always have escape protocols. Jack agreed with the assessment, but recognized its implications for their safety, which means he might prioritize revenge over self-preservation. Catherine exposed him. "I helped her do it. We're both targets until he's in custody." Ben approached, drawn by the intensity of their conversation. "Dad, what's happening?" Jack turned to his son, calibrating his explanation for 9-year-old understanding while maintaining honesty. "The lady we helped, Catherine, she did something very brave. She told the truth about the bad men, and now everyone knows." Ben processed this with a child's straightforward morality. "So we won, the bad guys are going to jail." The innocent optimism pierced Jack's tactical focus, reminding him why this fight mattered beyond personal survival. "Some of them will, but it might take time for all of them to face consequences." Mike handed Ben a glass of water, his tone gentler than his usual gruffness. "Your dad's right, little man. The good guys landed a major blow, but the fight isn't completely over." Ben absorbed this military framing naturally, having grown up with it. "So we're still on a mission?" Jack nodded, marveling at his son's resilience while mourning the childhood simplicities he deserved. "For a little longer. We need to stay safe until we're sure the danger has passed." The conversation paused as Mike's phone rang. He checked the caller ID, eyebrows rising in surprise. "Unknown number, but coming through my encrypted line." He answered cautiously, then his expression shifted. "Catherine Morgan. How did you—" He paused, listening, then looked at Jack. "Yes, they're here. Both safe." Jack's pulse quickened as Mike activated the speaker function. Catherine's voice emerged, exhausted but unmistakably alive. "Jack, Ben, can you hear me?" "We're here," Jack confirmed, moving closer to the phone as Ben rushed to his side. "We saw the Washington Post article." "You did it." A short laugh carried through the connection, edged with bone-deep weariness. "Sophie did the hard part, convincing her editors to publish immediately without the usual weeks of verification. The evidence was too compelling to ignore." Where are you, Sean? Jack asked the question that had haunted him since their separation in Cumberland. Secure FBI location in Virginia, Catherine replied. After Collins showed his true colors at the library, Sophie and I escaped through a service tunnel she knew about from researching the building's architecture. Her actual FBI contact met us at a predetermined fallback location. Jack processed this with tactical approval. Sophie Chen had applied proper operational security planning, multiple exfiltration routes, and establishing genuine federal connections as contingency against compromise. The article mentioned Dave, Jack said, voice tightening. Any confirmation? Catherine's tone softened, communicating sympathy without condescension. I'm sorry, Jack. They found his vehicle submerged in the Allegheny River this morning. No body recovered yet, but evidence of foul play was clear. The FBI believes Blackwood's team staged the protective custody story specifically to trap us. Jack absorbed the confirmation of his friend's death grief, a familiar weight he would process later, when Ben wasn't watching his face with such intensity. His son's perception missed nothing, the slight tightening around Jack's eyes, the momentary clench of his jaw. Uncle Dave is with Mom now, isn't he? Ben asked quietly. The simple question cracked something in Jack's carefully maintained composure. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder, drawing strength from the contact. I think he probably is, buddy. Catherine gave them a moment before continuing, understanding the significance of what remained unspoken. The FBI is coordinating multiple agencies on Blackwood's takedown, but he's gone underground. His private jet filed a flight plan for Geneva, but diverted to an unknown destination. They've frozen his accessible assets, but he likely has contingency resources. Mike leaned forward, professional assessment overriding emotion. What's the threat assessment for Jack and Ben? Hi, Catherine replied without hesitation. Before I went public, Blackwood's focus was containing the evidence. Now it's survival and revenge. His security team, particularly Marcus Cole, considers this unfinished business. The confirmation solidified Jack's immediate priorities. We need secure transport to legitimate federal protection. No more Collins situations. That's why I'm calling, Catherine explained. The FBI wants to bring you in protective custody at the same facility where I am. They can dispatch a team to your location immediately. Jack exchanged glances with Mike, years of military experience, breeding healthy skepticism of official assurances. How do we verify they're legitimate? Collins had convincing credentials and knew details about Dave he shouldn't have accessed. Catherine had anticipated the concern. The team will be led by Special Agent Diana Mercer. She'll reference Operation Thunderstorm, your code word with Ben, something Blackwood's team couldn't know unless they had direct surveillance of your conversations, which FBI technicians have verified isn't happening. The security protocol reassured Jack, though caution remained his default setting. When and where, they can reach Pittsburgh by morning. Extraction point of your choosing. Mike immediately offered a suggestion. I have access to a private airfield about 30 miles outside the city. Small, discreet, easily secured against unwanted visitors. Owned by a former recon Marine who runs charter flights. He's solid. The plan took shape quickly, coordinates exchange timing, establish verification protocols agreed upon. Throughout the conversation, Jack observed Ben, who listened with the focused attention of a child who had learned that adult discussions directly impacted his safety. After finalizing arrangements, Catherine asked for a moment alone with Jack. Mike tactfully guided Ben to the kitchen to prepare a snack, giving them privacy. Jack, Catherine's voice softened, the professional tone yielding to something more personal. I need to apologize for Cumberland. I should have trusted your instincts about Collins. Jack dismissed the self-recrimination. We were all operating on limited information. What matters is you got the evidence out. At what cost, though? The question carried the weight of lives disrupted and lost. Dave, you and Ben forced into hiding. Those consequences are on me. Jack considered his response carefully, aware of the pivotal nature of this conversation for whatever relationship might develop between them after the crisis passed. When I was in Afghanistan, my commanding officer said something I have never forgotten. He said, the easy path and the right path rarely run parallel. You chose the harder road because it was right. Dave would have made the same choice. I did. Silence followed the connection between them, transcending their brief physical acquaintance. Catherine finally spoke, her voice steadier. When this is over, when you and Ben are safe, I hope we can start again. Under better circumstances. The possibility hung between them a future beyond survival, beyond justice, where personal connection might flourish without the pressure of conspiracy and danger. I'd like that. Ben would too. After ending the call, Jack rejoined Mike and Ben in the kitchen. His son had constructed an elaborate sandwich, proudly displaying culinary creativity despite the late hour. The normalcy of the moment struck Jack with particular poignancy, how quickly children adapted, finding joy in small freedoms amid life-altering circumstances. So, we're meeting Catherine tomorrow. Ben asked, his perception missing nothing. Jack nodded, impressed by his son's attentiveness. The FBI is going to protect us until they catch all the bad guys. Ben considered this development with surprising skepticism. But that one FBI man tricked you before. How do we know these ones are real? The question demonstrated an evolution in Ben's understanding, innocence giving way to caution, trust becoming conditional rather than automatic. Jack recognized the bittersweet necessity of this growth while mourning the childhood simplicity lost. Smart question, Jack acknowledged. That's why they're using our special code words, something only you and I know. This reassured Ben, who returned to his sandwich with renewed confidence. Mike caught Jack's eye over the boy's head, conveying silent understanding of the parenting tightrope Jack walked, protecting Ben's sense of security while preparing him for genuine threats. They spent the remainder of the night preparing for morning extraction. Mike provided clean clothes, basic supplies, and a secure satellite phone programmed with emergency contacts. Jack created contingency plans, escape routes, and verification protocols, military habits that had once seemed paranoid in civilian life, now proving essential. Ben eventually fell asleep in the guest room, exhaustion, overcoming the excitement of their pending reunion with Catherine. Jack checked on him periodically, each quiet observation of his sleeping son, renewing his determination to create a future free from the shadow of Blackwood's reach. Around 3 a.m., Mike's security system chimed, motion detected in the alley behind the building. Both men moved to the monitoring station, watching as a black SUV with tinted windows cruised slowly past. Coincidence? Mike questioned, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Jack shook his head, calculating rapidly. They found us too quickly. Possible compromise in federal channels, or they had resources focused on Pittsburgh, anticipating we might seek shelter with former military connections. Mike shifted immediately to tactical assessment. We need to move, now, before they establish a perimeter. The evacuation plan executed with military precision. Ben wrapped in a blanket and carried, still sleeping, to the freight elevator. Essential supplies gathered in seconds. Alternate transportation prepared. Mike's restored Chevelle waited in a concealed garage beneath the warehouse, accessed through a hydraulic lift designed for motorcycle deliveries. Take it, Mike insisted, pressing the keys into Jack's hand. Low profile compared to what they were looking for. I'd disabled the GPS and installed signal jammers. Old school muscle car with new school countermeasures. Jack clasped his friend's shoulder, gratitude beyond words for the repeated sacrifices Mike made without hesitation. What about you? Mike's expression hardened with combat-ready resolve. I'll create a diversion. Make them think you're still here while you put distance between us. The plan made tactical sense, but left Jack torn between friendship and paternal responsibility. They're dangerous, Mike. Professional operators with advanced training and resources. A wolf's smile spread across Mike's face, the warrior beneath the civilian persona fully emerging. So am I. Plus, I've got home field advantage and some nasty surprises installed after my last deployment. Go, get Ben to safety. I'll contact you when it's clear. Jack settled Ben in the Chevelle's back seat, the boy barely stirring during the transfer. As he prepared to depart, Mike handed him a final item, a specialized satellite phone, unlike the commercial models they'd used previously. Military grade, Mike explained briefly. Untraceable, unmonitored channels. Extraction coordinates already programmed into the GPS. The farewell was brief, two warriors acknowledging risks without unnecessary sentiment. Jack guided the powerful car through the underground passage that emerged 2 blocks from the warehouse, navigating side streets to avoid the area where the SUV had been spotted. Pittsburgh's sleeping cityscape provided cover as Jack drove north, aiming for the rural airfield where federal protection awaited. Ben remained asleep in the back seat, the rumble of the Chevelle's engine creating a soothing white noise that preserved his rest despite their midnight flight. Jack maintained vigilance, checking mirrors for pursuit while calculating route options. The pre-dawn hours offered minimal traffic, each vehicle warranting scrutiny as potential threat. So far, no signs of tracking Mike's diversion, apparently successful. As they crossed the Allegheny River, leaving the city's glow behind, Jack allowed himself tentative optimism. The extraction point lay 90 minutes ahead, Catherine and legitimate federal protection waiting at the end of their journey. The Washington Post expose had transformed their private struggle into national newsmaking. Blackwood's activities too visible for easy continuation. The satellite phone chimed, displaying Mike's emergency contact. Jack answered immediately, tension returning. "What's wrong?" Mike's voice came through, clearly battlefield focus evident in his clipped delivery. "They hit the warehouse. Four-man tactical team. I'm mobile, minimal damage sustained, but they're not pursuing and they broke off engagement immediately after confirming you weren't present." The behavior pattern triggered warning bells in Jack's tactical assessment. They're not following because they already know where we're going. The realization crystallized with terrible clarity. Their secure communications had been compromised. Either Catherine's location was being monitored or the extraction plan had leaked through federal channels infiltrated by Blackwood's influence. "The airfield is a trap," Jack concluded, already adjusting course away from their planned destination. "We need a new extraction point that no one could anticipate." Mike processed this with immediate understanding. "What about Camp Hawkins? The old military training ground upstate decommissioned 5 years ago. Restricted access, but our unit used it for pre-deployment exercises." You remember the layout. The suggestion ignited Jack's strategic thinking. Camp Hawkins offered defensive advantages, limited approach vectors, and most importantly, familiarity to former Marines while remaining obscure to civilian operators. "Perfect. Can you relay to Catherine through channels Blackwood wouldn't have access to?" "Already on it," Mike confirmed. "I've got a contact at the U.S. Marshal Service, completely separate communication system from FBI. I'll have them contact Catherine's protective detail directly." The revised plan took shape rapidly. New coordinates, adjusted timing, enhanced security protocols. Jack altered their route, taking secondary roads toward the abandoned military facility, while Mike coordinated with his marshal contact to redirect the federal extraction team. Ben stirred as sunlight began to filter through the trees lining the highway. "Dad, where are we?" Jack balanced honesty against unnecessary fear. "We had to change our meeting place. Some of the bad men found us in Pittsburgh, but Uncle Mike helped us get away safely." Ben absorbed this, sitting up to look out the window at the passing rural landscape. "Is Uncle Mike okay?" "He's fine," Jack assured his son. "He's very good at taking care of himself." Ben accepted this trust in his father's assessment evident. His resilience continued to amaze Jack, adapting to danger and disruption without surrendering childhood curiosity and optimism. "Are we still going to see Catherine?" Ben asked, genuine attachment evident in his tone. Jack nodded, noting his son's connection to the woman who had entered their lives so dramatically. "Yes, she's looking forward to seeing you too." Ben smiled at this confirmation, settling back to watch the scenery with renewed contentment. Jack monitored their surroundings with practiced vigilance, alert for pursuit or surveillance as they approached the turnoff for Camp Hawkins. The abandoned military facility appeared through the morning mist, chain-link fencing, topped with rusted barbed wire surrounding concrete buildings and overgrown training grounds. Signs warning U.S. government property, no trespassing, hung at regular intervals, deterring casual explorers without presenting serious obstacles to determined entry. Jack bypassed the main gate, following a maintenance access road he remembered from training exercises. The Chevelle handled the rough terrain, admirably powerful engine, and reinforced suspension, managing the neglected path through dense forest until they reached a clearing that had once served as a helicopter landing zone. "We'll wait here," Jack decided, positioning the car for quick departure if necessary. The FBI team should arrive within the hour if Mike's message got through. Ben unbuckled his seatbelt, stretching after the long drive. "Can I look around, just near the car?" Jack considered the request against security concerns, balancing his son's need for movement against potential risks. "Stay within 20 feet. If I call you, come back immediately." The boy nodded seriously, accepting the parameters without complaint, another sign of his adaptation to their extraordinary circumstances. Jack watched as Ben explored the clearing, collecting interesting rocks and examining the fated helicopter landing markings with scientific curiosity. The satellite phone vibrated. Mike's contact appearing on the display. Confirmation from Marshal Service. Message delivered to Catherine's protective detail. ETA to your location approximately 40 minutes. Relief tempered with continued vigilance. The revised plan was in motion, but dangers remained until they were securely in federal protection. Jack scanned the perimeter tactical assessment automatic after years of military operations in hostile territory. Movement at the tree line caught his attention, subtle displacement of foliage that experienced eyes recognized as human rather than animal. Jack tensed, hand moving instinctively toward the weapon Mike had provided. Ben, he called quietly, keeping his tone casual while infusing it with unmistakable command. Time to get back in the car. The boy responded immediately to the signal, abandoning his exploration and moving toward the Chevelle. Before he reached it, a figure emerged from the trees. Male military bearing tactical gear partially concealed beneath civilian clothing. Jack placed himself between the approaching threat and his stun weapon now drawn, but held low against his leg. That's far enough. The man stopped, hands visible at his sides, a deliberate posture signaling non-hostile intent while maintaining tactical readiness. Jack Reynolds, Marcus Cole. We have mutual acquaintance in Catherine Morgan. Ice formed in Jack's veins. Blackwood's head of security, the former CIA operator Catherine had specifically identified as dangerous, the man who had likely orchestrated Dave's murder and the Cumberland ambush. Ben, get in the car, lock the doors. Jack's voice left no room for question, his eyes never leaving Marcus as his son complied. Marcus observed the interaction with professional assessment. Smart kid, follows instructions well. Must make your job easier. The casual reference to Ben elevated Jack's threat perception from defensive to lethal. What do you want, Marcus? Straight to business. I appreciate that. Marcus maintained his position, making no aggressive movements, but radiating lethal capability. Blackwood sent me to tie up loose ends. You're on that list, obviously. Jack calculated options, angles, timing the muscle memory of combat decision-making. Yet we're talking instead of shooting. Marcus acknowledged this with a slight nod. Professional courtesy, one operator to another, and a proposition that might interest you. Suspicion mingled with tactical necessity, keeping Marcus talking, provided information, and bought time for the FBI extraction team to arrive. I'm listening. Blackwood's finished in the States. Catherine's evidence was too comprehensive, too public. He's relocated to more amenable jurisdiction with significant resources. Marcus spoke with the detached assessment of someone discussing business strategy rather than criminal flight. But he remains fixated on perceived betrayals. Catherine's primarily, yours by extension. Jack maintained his defensive posture angle calculated to protect Ben in the vehicle behind him. Get to the point. I'm offering you an exit, Marcus stated simply. Take your son, disappear with new identities, sufficient resources to start over. In exchange, you provide no further assistance to federal investigations, no testimony, no corroboration of Catherine's claims. The proposal revealed desperation beneath Blackwood's veneer of power, concern that Jack's first-hand account could strengthen the case against him. And Catherine, something shifted in Marcus's expression, professional detachment briefly replaced by something more complex. Not part of this offer, Blackwood considers her betrayal, personal. The moment crystallized for Jack. Marcus wasn't just a security operative executing orders. His reluctance to discuss Catherine's fate suggested history between them, perhaps explaining Catherine's hesitation when mentioning him back at the cabin. The man they'd been running from had his own conflicted loyalties. Jack recognized the implication with perfect clarity. So I saved myself and my son by abandoning her to Blackwood's revenge. Marcus shrugged slightly. Self-preservation is rational. You have no obligation to Catherine beyond what you've already done. Your priority should be your son's safety. The manipulation struck at Jack's deepest responsibility, Ben's protection versus broader justice. The conflict Marcus intended to exploit. And if I decline, then this conversation becomes something else entirely. The threat remained measured, professional. The FBI team you're expecting won't arrive. Communications have been intercepted. You're on your own, and I'm not alone. As if summoned his words, two additional figures emerged from different positions along the tree line. Tactical positioning, creating crossfire coverage of the clearing. Jack's military assessment registered their professionalism, calculating rapidly diminishing options for protecting Ben against multiple armed operators. Last chance Reynolds, Marcus offered, voice remaining the conversational, despite the escalating threat. Take the deal. Walk away. Live to raise your son. The moment crystallized Jack's core values against the backdrop of impossible choices. Survival versus integrity. Personal safety versus justice. The example he would set for Ben through his decision. My son is watching, Jack replied, resolve hardening his voice. Everything I teach him about courage and doing what's right would be meaningless if I took your offer. Disappointment rather than anger crossed Marcus's features. I expected more pragmatism from a fellow professional. Family first mission, second wasn't that Marine doctrine. Jack's grip tightened on his weapon, calculating engagement sequence against three targets while prioritizing Ben's protection. The mission is protecting my family. All of it. That includes Catherine now. Something resembling respect flickered across Marcus's face before professional detachment returned. Admirable but misguided loyalty. The standoff teetered on the edge of violence when the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors cut through the morning air. All eyes turned skyward as a black tactical helicopter crested the tree line, FBI markings clearly visible on its fuselage. Marcus assessed the changing tactical situation with professional rapidity. Unexpected development. Perhaps your communications weren't as compromised as we believed. The helicopter descended toward the clearing rotors, whipping dust and debris across the confrontation. Through the side door, tactical operators in FBI gear deployed repelling lines weapons trained on Marcus and his team. Federal agents' weapons down. The command boomed through the helicopter's external speakers, unambiguous in intent and authority. Marcus made no move toward his weapon, instead meeting Jack's eyes with something approaching professional respect. Appears you bet correctly, Reynolds, this time. The tactical team secured the clearing with practiced efficiency, disarming Marcus and his operators without resistance. Jack maintained his position, protecting the Chevelle until a familiar figure emerged from the helicopter once it touched down. Catherine moved toward him, escorted by armed agents, her expression reflecting relief and concern in equal measure. Jack, Ben, are you all right? Jack lowered his weapon as federal agents took control of the scene, tension releasing from his body in gradual waves. We're fine. How did you find us? The communication was supposed to go through Marshal Service. Catherine's smile held exhausted triumph. It did, but I also insisted on a tracking protocol for the satellite phone Mike gave you. After Cumberland, I wasn't taking chances with compromised communications. The revelation of her foresight, planning contingencies upon contingencies, deepened Jack's appreciation for her strategic thinking. Catherine moved past him to the car, where Ben remained secure, knocking gently on the window. Ben's face brightened with recognition, the door unlocking instantly as he launched himself into Catherine's arms. The boy's genuine attachment to her struck Jack profoundly, Ben's capacity for trust and connection remaining intact despite the dangers they'd faced together. A senior FBI agent approached, introducing herself as the legitimate agent Diana Mercer. We've been tracking Marcus Cole since he entered Pennsylvania. When he converged on your location, we accelerated the extraction timeline. Jack watched as Marcus was secured in tactical restraints, the former CIA operator, maintaining professional composure despite his capture. Will the charges stick? Men like Blackwood have resources to corrupt the system. Agent Mercer's expression reflected determined confidence. Blackwood miscalculated with the scale of his operation. Too many agencies involved now, too much public attention. His influence has limits, which he's discovering. Catherine rejoined them, Ben's hand firmly in hers, a tableau that affected Jack more deeply than he had anticipated. The evidence is being processed by multiple federal agencies simultaneously, she explained. Cross-verification protocols to prevent suppression or manipulation. Blackwood's financial empire is being dismantled, piece by piece. And Blackwood himself, Jack asked the question foremost in his mind, the threat that would determine their future security. Agent Mercer's expression tightened. Still at large, believed to have fled to a property in Southeast Asia with limited extradition enforcement. We have international partners pursuing financial traces, but his contingency planning was thorough. The incomplete resolution tempered Jack's relief. A threat diminished but not eliminated remained a threat nonetheless. So it's not over. Catherine stepped closer, her free hand finding his in a gesture that communicated understanding beyond words. The most dangerous phase is Blackwood operating from hiding with frozen assets and international alerts poses a different category of risk than Blackwood, with full resources and protected status. Ben looked between the adults, absorbing the shift in energy. Does this mean we can go home now? The simple question encapsulated the fundamental concern: when normal life might resume, what form it would take, whether safety could ever be assumed rather than continuously maintained. Not immediately, Agent Mercer answered before Jack could formulate a response. We'll need protective custody during the initial investigation and prosecution phases. Witness security protocols. Ben processed this with remarkable maturity. Like in the movies, where people get new names and houses. Catherine squeezed his hand gently. Something like that, but temporary until all the legal work is finished. Jack considered the implications, leaving behind their established life in Oak Ridge, the home he had built with Angela, the workshop where he created furniture with his hands. Material loss is against the paramount priority of Ben's safety. What happens next, he asked, practicality asserting itself through emotional considerations. Agent Mercer outlined the immediate plan: secure transport to a federal facility, debriefing procedures, witness protection protocols. The machinery of justice system protection engaging around them with institutional efficiency. As they prepared to board the helicopter, Jack paused beside the Chevelle, Mike's parting gift, now evidence in a federal investigation. The vehicle represented the chain of friendship and sacrifice that had made their survival possible. Dave's warning, Frank's supplies, Mike's diversion and transportation. Catherine noticed his hesitation, understanding flowing between them without words. We'll make sure Mike knows you're safe, and we'll honor Dave's sacrifice by seeing this through to the end. The commitment resonated with Jack's own determination. Justice incomplete remained justice denied. For Dave, for his fallen brothers in Afghanistan, for all victims of Blackwood's corruption, the process required completion regardless of personal cost. Ben tugged at Jack's hand, practical concerns asserting themselves. Dad, I forgot my book in the car. The normalcy of the request, a child's attachment to a story amid extraordinary circumstances, grounded Jack in what truly mattered. He retrieved The Hobbit from the back seat, the weathered copy representing continuity between past and future, between normal life and their current extraordinary circumstances. You know, Jack said as he handed the book to Ben, once things settle down, I'll build you a new bookshelf, something special with carved dragons like the ones in the story. Ben's eyes widened. Really, like your custom pieces? Jack nodded, making a promise not just about furniture, but about the future itself. Better, the finest piece I'll ever make. As the helicopter lifted off, Ben secured between Jack and Catherine. The abandoned military base receded below them. Marcus and his team, now in custody, the confrontation resolved without bloodshed. Jack watched the landscape transform from immediate tactical terrain to broader perspective, a metaphor for their journey from personal survival to systemic justice. Catherine's hand found his again, connection strengthening despite the helicopter's vibration. No words passed between them, none needed in that moment of shared understanding. They had emerged from the flood, literal and metaphorical, into something unexpected. Partnership, purpose, possibility. Ben opened his book, finding his place with practiced ease, the story providing familiar comfort amid transformation. Jack watched his son, then met Catherine's gaze across the boy's bent head. In her eyes, he recognized the same commitment that anchored his own resolve to protect what mattered, to stand against corruption regardless of cost, to build something worthy from the wreckage of what Blackwood had sought to destroy. The best stories, Jack said quietly, his words meant for both Ben and Catherine, aren't about how easy the journey was, but about choosing the right path even when it's the hardest one. Ben looked up from his book Wisdom, beyond his years, in his solemn nod. Like Bilbo leaving the Shire even though he was scared. Exactly like that, Catherine agreed, her smile connecting the three of them in understanding. The helicopter banked eastward, carrying them toward a federal protection and the complex process of justice. Behind lay danger survived and lives transformed. A head-weighted uncertainty tempered with purpose, the harder path chosen because it aligned with the right one. Not an ending, but a transition toward whatever future they would build together from the crucible of shared courage.